bunch of people stuck in an isolated location, an evil force, and religious wackos. You know this is a Stephen King movie. So In the Tall Grass is a 2019 Netflix horror film directed by Vincenzo Natali. He adapted the screenplay from a Stephen King and Joe Hill novel of the same name. Joe Hill, of course, being Stephen King's son, and this was actually a project they worked on for a week just for the fun of it. Both of these guys are really great at writing interesting short horror stories, so this should be good. Netflix already brilliantly adapted Stephen King's 1922 and Gerald's Game, so I had kind of high hopes for this third adaptation. I only watched a little bit of the beginning of the trailer so that I would kind of know what it was about, but I wouldn't have a preconceived notion about anything else that transpires in the movie. So did it live up to the standard of the two previous Netflix Stephen King adaptations? Let's find out. And don't worry, as always, my review is going to be spoiler-free. First up is story. So two siblings are traveling cross-country, and along the way they have to make an emergency pit stop. While on said stop, they hear a kid yelling from the middle of a field about how he's lost and how he needs help. So of course, them being kind human beings, they go into the field to try to find him and help him. They quickly find out that something is very wrong in this field, but by that time it's too late and they are stuck inside right alongside this kid. So from the get-go, the movie really drip feeds you information, whether it be about the characters and their backstories or about what's going on in the tall grass. It does give you enough in the beginning to get you interested and to keep you hooked. There are a few moments in this film that you won't expect and they'll make you say, wow, that's kind of cool. Now when a movie has a premise and twists that are this interesting, it does bring up a lot of questions as you watch it. Like, how does time work inside of the field? Does everything outside of the tall grass keep working the same? Do the locals know about it? And if so, why haven't they done anything to stop it? What are the forces at play? What is their purpose? Where are they from? And many, many more. Unfortunately, most of those questions will not be answered. Though the story does get a bit convoluted and tends to be a little bit pointless towards the end, I did enjoy some of the things that it did with the main characters. And that brings me to the cinematography, aka the visuals, editing, and color grading. The visuals in this movie, given its simple premise, are kind of spectacular. It's a movie about being stuck in a field of grass, but the way that it is shot with all these dynamic camera movements and pretty flashy punch-ins to show you certain details at key moments, along with some pretty great wide and aerial shots that show you how isolated they are and how dire their situation is. There's a decent amount of CGI in this film, but it's all pretty expertly done. You can tell that they really put time and effort and care into it to make the transitions from the real grass to the CGI grass pretty seamless. And there were points where I couldn't tell what was CGI and what was real grass, so that's pretty amazing. There are these really great vibrant shots of this bright green field and blue sky, and in those you see these desolated buildings and these vehicles that are all destroyed and old, and you're wondering, why does this field look so amazing? And all of the stuff around it or in it just looks like crap. The editing was solid, but it wasn't too stylish. It always was meant to just complement what was going on the screen and the vibe they were trying to put across. There are a lot of night shots in this movie, but they're lit really well. It's subdued lighting, but you can always see what's going on. And so all these complaints you're hearing about it being too dark, I don't really think that's fair. So the visuals are great, but how does it sound? The ambient sounds in this movie are fantastic. There's a lot of stuff that you hear that's really creepy, and sometimes you're not sure if you heard it until you hear it again because it's off in the distance, so it adds a ton of atmosphere. We're talking about everything from like scary monster and big wild animal sounds to primal drums off in the distance, whispers, screams. There's so much going on in the audio in the background of this movie. Given the fact that the tall grass that they're stuck in is supposed to make you feel isolated and disoriented, they did a lot of these audio cues where you would hear a sound start from one area and move to the other, and you can hear it go that way. There is a lot of dark, foreboding music, tribal rhythms, and other times these really dissonant cello chords and all this other stuff, and it all comes together really well. But what I really loved about it is it knows when to stop. It knows when to shut the hell up so that you can hear these noises that I was talking about earlier. One of the things that I did not like about the sound was the fairly obvious ADR. There are a few points in the film where you can tell they had to record something afterwards, maybe because the audio wasn't recorded that well, or they added these lines of dialogue to maybe add to the atmosphere of the story or whatever. It kind of sticks out, and you'll definitely know when it's not recorded then and when it was recorded in post. But overall, the sound of the music is pretty damn good. And that brings us to spookiness, aka the atmosphere, world building, all that good stuff. The music, sound, shot selections, dynamic movements, and a lot of other elements really add to this tension that just ratchets up constantly all the way to about 3/4 of the movie, and then they kind of go all in on this weird stuff that happens. The film uses the passage of time in a pretty clever manner so that you feel just as disoriented as the main characters. Now, when it comes to those characters, they are fairly one-dimensional. You learn a couple new things about them along the way, outside of what you got from the initial impression of them. So there's definitely not enough character or even story building for them. It's very shallow. That will always add to your emotional attachment of the character, so if something bad does happen to them, or if they are in danger, you feel more dread, you feel more worry for them, and it kind of freaks you out while you're watching the movie. There are a lot of great details from the book that they don't go into in the film. And the problem with that is it takes away from the story, and it's not like they didn't have time to put them in because the movie just barely hits an hour and a half. A lot of those details would have aided in the world building and added to the creepiness, and they would have answered quite a few of those questions that I brought up when I was talking about the story. But let's get to the scares. This movie really expertly wields that fear that you had as a kid. Remember when you had to take out the trash at night and you were okay as you were bringing the trash to the garbage, but once you got closer to that trash can or that dumpster and you threw that bag in, you turned around and you ran back to your house as fast as possible because you knew something jumped out of that can or that dumpster and it was going to murder you if you didn't get in that house ASAP. This movie just really drips tension, and it lasts for quite a while. Now, of course, if you don't give in to your suspension of disbelief, if you don't let go and just go with it and let the field be scary and not think about it's just grass, how scary can it be, it won't work for you. But it wasn't all tension building. There were a couple of jump scares, most of which were kind of predictable. One of them was pretty well earned. The problem is all of those jump scares and all of that tension and all of this atmosphere and world building is just wasted. It just kind of goes all out the window and it just turns into a knockoff version of the finale of The Shining, to be honest. That's what it felt like. And it's not because of the actors or their performances. They did the best with what they were given. A lot of people are talking about how gory it is. That is definitely not the case. There's barely any gore in this movie. There is this one moment that will mess with a lot of people, but it didn't bother me at all because I wasn't connected to the characters like I needed to be. But as it was, it felt like it was just more in there for shock value than anything. If they would have given us more, I think it would have been a lot better.
And now the moment we've all been waiting for is here.
We're out of time.
It's Judgment Day.
So in summary, this movie's oppressive nature, effective tension building, and intriguing plot threads are all squandered in the third act. It's brought down by some pretty clunky writing and dialogue, and a lack of answers for a lot of the things that they showed, but they didn't let you know what they are or what the purpose was, or even if it mattered at all. And that's kind of how the whole movie felt in general, because of that ending and because of that third act, it kind of just went nowhere. It's not nearly as good as the other two Stephen King adaptations that Netflix did, but it is better than something, say, like The Silence. But that's not saying much. I definitely wouldn't pay to see this in theaters, but it's definitely worth watching on Netflix, if you're looking for something scary or to pass the time. And that's why I'm giving In the Tall Grass a 5 out of 10.